I still remember the day my children stopped calling me Mum. It didn't happen all at once. It was like watching something fade in slow motion, a color draining from a photograph, a voice growing quieter each time you hear it. One day, I just realized the word wasn't spoken anymore. For so many years, that word had been my whole world. Mum. It meant sticky fingers tugging at my sleeve, small arms wrapped around my neck, and laughter echoing through the house. It meant being needed, being loved, being seen. But now, the house is quiet, too quiet. Sometimes I sit in the living room with the curtains half open, just listening. To the clock ticking, the kettle boiling, the wind brushing against the windows. Those are the sounds that keep me company these days. I don't blame my children. Life moves fast for them, faster than I ever knew it could. They have jobs, families, responsibilities, and phones that never stop ringing. And me? I've become a quiet figure in the background of their busy lives, a name they say on birthdays, sometimes at Christmas, and when they need something signed or settled. I don't say that with bitterness. No, not anymore. There was a time when it broke my heart, when every unanswered call or forgotten visit felt like a wound. But I've learned something about love over the years. Sometimes it changes shape. It doesn't always sound like laughter or hugs. Sometimes it's just a small text message saying, "Hope you're okay, Mum." Sometimes it's silence that still means love, even if it's hard to see. But before it became silence, it was once everything. I had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. My eldest, James, was always the serious one. Even as a child, he had this look in his eyes, as if he was carrying the world's worries in his small hands. He would sit by the window with his books while the other 2 played outside, and I'd wonder what he was thinking about. Then there was Matthew, my middle one. Oh, he was a whirlwind, always running, always climbing, always laughing. He had this light about him, the kind that made you forget your troubles for a while. Even when he broke something, which he often did, I could never stay angry. And my youngest, Sarah, she was my heart. Soft-spoken, gentle, always holding my hand. She loved to help in the kitchen, even when her little fingers could barely hold a spoon. I used to tell her she had my heart in her pocket, and she'd giggle and say, "I'll keep it safe, Mom." Those were the days the house felt alive. There was always noise, always mess, always something cooking or spilling or breaking. I used to sigh and say, "I can't wait until you lot grow up and I can have some peace." Oh, how foolish that sounds now. Peace, I've learned, can be very loud when it's empty. We lived in a small town just outside Birmingham. A red brick house with ivy crawling up one side and a garden that never seemed to grow quite the same way twice. My husband, Michael, worked as an electrician. He was a quiet man, kind but firm. We didn't have much, but we had enough, and we had each other. Our home was always full of laughter, especially on Sundays. Sunday dinners were my favorite. Roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, potatoes crisp around the edges, and the sound of the children arguing over who'd get the last one. Michael would shake his head, pretending to scold them, and I'd just smile to myself, feeling proud. Those were the moments I thought would last forever. You never think they'll end, do you? You never imagine a time when the chairs will sit empty, the plates will gather dust, and the laughter will become just an echo. The change began slowly. I think it started when James went to university. I remember standing in the doorway, holding his suitcase while he packed the last of his things. He was so grown up then. Tall, confident, ready to take on the world. "Don't forget to call, love," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I won't, Mum," he promised. He kissed my cheek, smiled that shy smile of his, and walked out the door. For weeks after, I'd keep my phone close, waiting. The first call came after 2 weeks, a quick one. The next came after a month, and then just silence. He was busy, I told myself. They all get busy. When Matthew left for his apprenticeship, he promised he'd visit every weekend. He meant it too, I think, but soon weekends turned into months, and his calls grew shorter. Sarah stayed the longest, bless her, but when she found love, her world began to revolve around someone else. That's how it goes, I suppose. And just like that, my nest emptied. At first, I filled my days with little things: cleaning, gardening, baking. I'd keep the radio on just to fill the space. I'd make too much food and send some to the neighbors. I told myself it was enough, but sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in the living room and whisper, "Good night, my loves," out of habit. It was strange how the habit of being a mother stayed, even when the role seemed to fade. Years went by. The children built their lives. New homes, new jobs, new families. They'd visit on birthdays or Mother's Day, but the visits became shorter each time. They'd arrive with hurried smiles, gifts wrapped in shiny paper, and eyes that kept glancing at their watches. "Sorry, Mum, we can't stay long." "I'll call you next week, I promise. We're just so busy these days." I'd nod and smile, pretending it was fine. After all, what else could I do? Love doesn't demand. It waits. I started keeping a journal around that time, not because I had anything special to say, but because I needed someone to talk to, even if it was just a piece of paper. I wrote about my garden, the neighbors, the changing seasons, but sometimes the words came out like confessions. I miss them. I wonder if they miss me. Maybe I did something wrong. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? When something breaks, we blame ourselves first. One afternoon, I was dusting the photo frames in the hallway. There's one picture I always stop at. The three of them, sitting on the garden bench, smiling at the camera. Their faces sunlit, their arms around each other. It was taken the summer before James left for university. I ran my fingers over the glass and whispered, "Where did you all go?" The phone rang then, startling me. It was Sarah. My heart lifted instantly. Her calls were rare these days. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice bright but the years that followed were quiet ones. Not bad, not miserable, just quiet, in a way that seeps into your bones. When you live alone long enough, you begin to notice small things, the way the light falls through the kitchen window at the same hour every morning, the faint hum of the refrigerator that never used to sound so loud, the echo of your own footsteps when you move from room to room. I started filling my days with little routines: morning tea by the window, feeding the birds, folding the same few pieces of laundry, writing notes on the calendar, buy milk, call doctor, water plants. It gave me something to look forward to, even if no one else was around to see it. Sometimes I'd make 2 cups of tea by mistake, an old habit from when Michael was still alive. I'd catch myself doing it, laugh softly, and pour the extra one away. I often wondered what he would have said about how things turned out. He was always the patient one, the steady hand when I got emotional. "They'll come around, Mary," he would have said. "They just need time." But time, I've learned, doesn't always bring people closer. Sometimes it carries them further away. It was around that time that James started his own business. He called one evening, his voice brisk and tired. Mary, just wanted to let you know I might not be able to visit for a while. Work's been hectic. Oh, that's all right, love. You take care of yourself. He sighed on the other end, distracted. Yeah, I will. Anyway, gotta run. I'll text later. The line went dead before I could say goodbye. I sat there for a moment, phone still in my hand, the sound of the dial tone humming in my ear. Then I placed it gently on the table and whispered, "Good night, James." He never did send that text. Sarah was the one I spoke to the most, though even she had grown distant. Her children, my grandchildren, were growing fast, and her life revolved around school runs, work, and exhaustion. I understood, of course. I remember those days well, when you barely have time to breathe, let alone visit your mother. But sometimes I just wished she'd call without a reason, not to ask about a recipe or to check a date or to confirm a detail for the family tree she was putting together. Just to talk, just to ask how I was doing. I tried calling her once on a Sunday evening. "Hello, dear," I said brightly when she picked up. Mary, I can't talk long. I'm getting the kids ready for bed." "Oh, of course, love. I just wanted to hear your voice, that's all." She paused for a second, her tone softening slightly. "That's sweet. I'll call you later in the week, okay?" "All right, darling." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "Good night to the little ones." After we hung up, I sat in my chair by the window, listening to the night settle in. I wanted to believe she'd call later that week. She didn't. Matthew, my middle one, had moved abroad for work. He was always adventurous, my Matthew. Restless, full of dreams. He sent postcards at first. I kept every one of them. Paris, Rome, Berlin. His handwriting was messy but full of life. He'd written, on the first one, "Having the time of my life, Mum." But then the postcards stopped coming in, replaced by the occasional email. Then not even that. I didn't blame him. The world is wide and beautiful, and he had every right to live it. Still, I missed hearing his voice. I missed the way he used to burst through the front door shouting, "Mom, what's for dinner?" I would have made anything he wanted just to hear that again. That Sunday morning, I was in the garden pulling weeds when everything went black. Just like that. No warning, no pain, just darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the grass, the smell of soil and rain all around me. My body felt heavy, my chest tight. Somehow, I managed to crawl back inside and reach the phone. My fingers trembled as I pressed the numbers. I don't remember what I said to the emergency operator, only that her voice was calm and kind. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the quiet street. I remember the flashing lights, the neighbors peering through their windows, the paramedics lifting me onto a stretcher. Everything felt hazy, like a dream you're half awake in. At the hospital, the doctor told me it had been a mild heart attack. "You're lucky," he said gently. "If you hadn't called when you did, it could have been much worse." Lucky. That's what they called it. But lying there in that white bed, surrounded by machines that beeped softly, I didn't feel lucky. I felt small, fragile, forgotten. The next morning, a nurse asked if there was anyone she should call. I hesitated, then gave her Sarah's number. "My daughter," I said. "She's probably busy, but perhaps she should know." She nodded and walked away. Hours passed, the ward filled with the sounds of footsteps, voices, and distant laughter. I kept glancing at the clock, at the door, waiting for it to open. By evening, Sarah still hadn't come. As the months rolled on, birthdays came and went. My 72nd passed quietly. I bought myself a small cake from the shop, lit a candle, and whispered, "Happy birthday, old girl." Sarah sent a text that evening. "Happy birthday, Mary. Hope you have a lovely day. XX." Not Mom, just Mary. I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, wanting to type something like, "It's Mum to you," but I didn't. Instead, I just replied, "Thank you, love. Hope you're well." I put the phone down and blew out the candle. The flame flickered, then went out, leaving a small trail of smoke curling upward, the room dim again, the silence settling back in. One evening, the phone rang. It was Matthew. My heart leapt when I heard his voice. "Mom! Well, Mary, how are you?" "Hello, sweetheart," I said, my voice trembling just slightly. "Oh, it's good to hear you." He laughed. "It's been ages, hasn't it? Sorry about that. Life's a bit mad these days." "I can imagine," I said, smiling. "Are you eating well?" "Sort of," he chuckled. "You know how it is." We chatted for a while, small talk, nothing deep. Then he said, "Hey, listen, I might be coming back to the UK for a few weeks next year. Maybe we can catch up." My heart warmed. "That would be lovely, love. You can stay here, of course." He hesitated. Well, I'll probably be in London mostly, but I'll see what I can do." I smiled, even though I knew what that meant. "That's all right, dear. Just knowing you're home will be enough." When we hung up, I sat there with the biggest smile on my face. It faded slowly as the minutes passed, but I held on to it. Sometimes hope is all a mother has left, and I wasn't ready to let it go. That Christmas, I put up the tree again. Just a small one, the old one Michael and I used to decorate together. I hung their old ornaments, too. James's little clay star, Matthew's paper snowman, Sarah's felt heart with her name stitched in uneven letters. I made mince pies, even though no one would eat them but me. I played the carols on the radio, humming softly to myself. When the day came, I called each of them. None of them picked up. I left cheerful messages, pretending I didn't notice the time passing. By evening, the house was quiet again. I poured myself a small glass of sherry and sat by the fire. The glow of the tree lights reflected in the window, soft and blurry. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Merry Christmas, my loves, wherever you are." And even though no one answered, I felt a strange peace settle over me. Maybe that's what love becomes in the end. Quiet, steady, expecting nothing in return. But the truth was, the silence was starting to change me. I stopped baking as much. The garden grew wild. Some days I didn't open the curtains until afternoon. It wasn't sadness exactly, just weariness, a heaviness that crept in without warning. One morning I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The lines were deeper, the eyes dimmer. I whispered, "Where did she go? The mum I used to be." I didn't have an answer. That was the year I started talking to Michael's photograph more often. Just small things. "You'd laugh if you saw the garden now." Or, "Sarah's boy looks just like her when she was 5. And sometimes, when the loneliness became too loud, I'd whisper, "I wish they remembered me the way they used to." That's how it happens, you know? Not with anger or cruelty, but with time. Time wears down love if you don't tend to it. It turns mothers into memories, homes into houses, and the word mum into something that sounds almost old-fashioned.
It was early spring when the turning point came.
I remember because the daffodils had just begun to bloom in the garden. They were always the first to appear, no matter how harsh the winter had been. I'd planted them with Michael the year we moved in. Every March, they came back, stubborn, bright, and faithful. I used to think love should be like that. That morning, I felt strange. My hands were trembling as I made my tea. The spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered against the floor. I bent down to pick it up, but felt a sharp pain in my chest. Just a flash, but enough to make me sit down. For a moment, I sat there quietly, trying to catch my breath. The clock ticked softly on the wall. I told myself it was nothing. Just age. Just the body complaining a little. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I thought about calling someone, maybe Sarah or James, but I didn't want to worry them. They were busy, after all, and I didn't want them to think I was being dramatic. So I just sat there for a while, breathing slowly until the feeling passed. It did pass, but it left behind a strange emptiness, a whisper in the back of my mind that said, "You are getting old, Mary, and you are alone." A few weeks later, Matthew came home from abroad. When he walked through the door, I hardly recognized him. His hair was streaked with gray, his face leaner, but his smile, that was the same. "Mom," he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted longer than any words could. "I've missed you." I closed my eyes, holding him tight. "I've missed you too, my boy." We spent that evening talking about his travels, his work, the years that had passed. He showed me pictures of places he'd been, mountains, oceans, cities that sparkled at night. I listened to every word, proud and aching all at once. Then he grew quiet. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think coming home would feel like going backward, but now I realize it's the only place that never stops waiting for you." I smiled. "That's what home does, love. It waits. Even when no one's here, it waits." That summer, Sarah insisted we all take a family photo, the first in nearly 15 years. We stood in the garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and sunlight. The children laughed, running around as James tried to get them to stand still. Matthew was holding a daffodil, grinning. "All right, everyone," Sarah said, setting the camera timer. "Smile." As the shutter clicked, I felt something warm and full inside me, a quiet peace I hadn't felt in a long, long time. When the photo printed later, I looked at it for a long while. There we all were, a little older, a little worn, but together. And that was enough. Sometimes when the house was quiet again after the children went to bed, I'd sit outside with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and think about the years that had passed. The lonely birthdays, the silent Christmases, the days I'd wondered if they even remembered me. It would have been easy to let bitterness take root, to say they forgot me and now they want to make amends. But love doesn't work that way. A mother's heart doesn't keep score. It just keeps beating, quietly, waiting for the sound of familiar footsteps again. The years have softened me in ways I never expected. Time has a strange kindness. It doesn't erase pain, but it smooths its edges until you can hold it without bleeding. Now, when I wake up in the mornings, the sunlight streams gently across my little garden window, and I sit with my cup of tea, watching the day begin. The children's laughter echoes from the next room, and sometimes I catch Sarah humming the same tune I used to hum when she was small. Life has come full circle. There's a peace in knowing that things don't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Families aren't made of flawless love. They're stitched together with forgiveness, with small moments of trying again, with quiet understanding that comes too late but still matters. Sometimes I think about the years I lost, the phone calls that never came, the birthdays spent alone, the dinners eaten in silence. And yet, when I look at where we are now, I realize those years weren't wasted. They taught me patience. They taught me that love doesn't vanish just because it isn't spoken aloud. It waits, like a candle left burning in a window, guiding someone home. Last week, I found an old photo tucked inside a drawer. It was from when the children were little. All of us in front of the old house. Michael standing behind me, his hands on my shoulders. Everyone was smiling. The corners of the picture were worn, but the feeling in it was alive. I sat there for a long time, running my fingers over the faded paper, whispering their names like a prayer. Then I placed it back in the frame beside my bed. Not to hold on, but to remember. There was one evening, late in autumn, when Sarah and I sat by the fire after everyone had gone to bed. She looked tired but content. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Regret what, love?" "Not saying anything. When we stopped calling you Mom. When we started treating you like someone outside the family." I looked at the firelight flickering against the wall. I used to, yes. I used to wonder what I did wrong. But after a while, I realized it wasn't about blame. It was just life. People drift. Words change. But love, real love, it stays somewhere deep inside, even when it's quiet. Sarah leaned her head against my shoulder. "I don't deserve you." I smiled softly. "You're my daughter. That's all that matters." After that night, things felt different, lighter somehow. We started having small family dinners every Sunday. Matthew would call in from wherever he was, and James would bring dessert. The grandchildren would argue over who got to sit next to Grandma, and I'd just laugh, surrounded by the noise I used to miss so much. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was real, and that was enough for me. One afternoon, Sarah came home early and found me sitting in the garden. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" she asked. I smiled. "About how quiet it used to be here." She sat beside me, resting her hand on mine. "We won't let it get quiet again." I turned to her, smiling gently. "Life always gets quiet, love. That's just how it goes. But that's all right. Quiet doesn't mean empty." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. As the months went on, I felt my strength returning. I started walking again, baking again, even humming while I cooked, something I hadn't done since Michael passed. One morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. It was from James. "Mom, I took your shepherd's pie recipe. Don't be mad. I want to make it for my family tonight. Love, Jay." I laughed out loud when I read it. Then I folded the note neatly and tucked it into my recipe book. It was such a small thing, but to me it meant everything, because it wasn't about the pie. It was about being remembered, being part of their lives again in the quiet, everyday ways that matter most. Later that year, we spent Christmas together, all of us. The tree twinkled in the corner, the smell of roast dinner filled the house, and the sound of laughter bounced off the walls. It felt like a dream I'd had so many times before, but never thought would come true. After dinner, the children gave me a small box wrapped in gold paper. Inside was a necklace, a tiny silver charm that read, "Mom." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I looked up at them, eyes full of tears. Sarah said softly, "We wanted you to know that you'll always be Mom, no matter what." I smiled through the blur of tears. "Thank you, my loves," I whispered. "You don't know how much that..." The years have softened me in ways I never expected. Time has a strange kindness. It doesn't erase pain, but it smooths its edges until you can hold it without bleeding. Now, when I wake up in the mornings, the sunlight streams gently across my little window garden, and I sit with my cup of tea, watching the day begin. The children's laughter echoes from the next room. And sometimes I catch Sarah humming the same tune I used to hum when she was small. Life has come full circle. There's a peace in knowing that things don't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Families aren't made of flawless love. They're stitched together with forgiveness, with small moments of trying again, with quiet understanding that comes too late but still matters. Sometimes I think about the years I lost, the phone calls that never came, the birthdays spent alone, the dinners eaten in silence. And yet, when I look at where we are now, I realize those years weren't wasted. They taught me patience. They taught me that love doesn't vanish just because it isn't spoken aloud. It waits, like a candle left burning in a window guiding someone home. Last week, I found an old photo tucked inside a drawer. It was from when the children were little. All of us in front of the old house, Michael standing behind me, his hands on my shoulders. Everyone was smiling. The corners of the picture were worn, but the feeling in it was alive. I sat there for a long time, running my fingers over the faded paper, whispering their names like a prayer. Then I placed it back in the frame beside my bed. Not to hold on, but to remember. In the evenings, when the house quiets down, I still talk to Michael sometimes. I tell him about the children, about how Sarah has become such a strong mother, how James has learned to listen more, how Matthew still travels but calls every Sunday without fail. And I tell him how they call me Mum again, not just as a name, but as something that feels whole again. I can almost hear him laugh, that gentle laugh he had when he was proud. I close my eyes, and for a moment I feel him here, not as a ghost, but as a warmth that never really left. Forgiveness doesn't happen in a single moment. It's not a grand gesture or a line in a story. It's a quiet choice you make over and over again until it becomes part of your breathing. I forgave my children long before they asked me to, and perhaps that's what love really is. Not waiting for someone to deserve it, but giving it anyway. When you've lived as many years as I have, you learn that love isn't about what you get in return. It's about what you keep giving, even when no one notices. That's what makes it real. The other day, my youngest grandchild asked me, "Grandma, why do you smile so much?" I told her, "Because every smile is a memory I get to keep." She giggled and hugged me, and in that moment, I thought, maybe this is what all those lonely nights were leading to. This warmth, this fullness, this peace. If someone were to ask me now what the hardest part of being a mother is, I would say, it's learning to let your children go and still love them just as deeply when they forget to look back. And the most beautiful part is when they finally turn around again, and you're still there, waiting, not with anger, but with open arms. Tonight, as I sit here by the window, the moonlight spills gently across my hands. The necklace they gave me, the one with the word Mum, glints softly in the light. I touch it, smiling. I think of all the versions of myself that existed, the young mother, the forgotten one, the woman who waited, the one who forgave. They all live here in this same heart. And if I could say one thing to every mother who's ever felt forgotten, it would be this: your love doesn't vanish when it isn't seen. It becomes the light that waits in silence, the light that guides your family home. So now, when I hear my children call, "Mom, can you help me with this?" or "Mom, are you all right?" I smile quietly, because those simple words, Mum, they carry every apology, every reunion, every piece of love we thought we'd lost. And as long as I can still hear them, I know my story isn't one of sorrow. It's one of return, of grace, of love that never gave up.